Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly baffling, honestly chilling investigation. We are going to dive into a disappearance that starts out as a localized mystery, but quickly ripples out into something with massive national security implications. So, grab your notebooks, get focused, and let's unravel the enigma of Melissa Casias. All right, so picture this. It's June 2025. A woman walks away, totally alone, down a New Mexico highway heading straight toward the mountains. All she's carrying is a backpack. Back at her home, she has left her entire life behind. Her purse, her wallet, her government ID, all of it is just sitting untouched on a table. Even her car is parked right there in the driveway. It's literally the perfect setup for a mystery, dropping us right in the middle of a story where every single normal rule of human behavior just seems to have been completely suspended. So, who exactly are we talking about here? This is Melissa Casias. She was 53 years old, working as an administrative assistant. But look, this wasn't just your average office job. Melissa held a high-level security clearance at the Los Alamos National Laboratory. And as you know, Los Alamos is the nation's premier nuclear weapons research facility. That one single fact adds immediate, incredible gravity to her status. Because when someone from Los Alamos just goes off the grid, it is never, ever just a simple missing persons case. Okay, let's dive into this timeline, because the morning of June 26th, 2025, started out totally normally. At 6:15 a.m., Melissa drops her husband, Mark, off at the Los Alamos lab. By 7:45 a.m., she's back at her home in Ranchos de Taos, and she tells her daughter she forgot her security badge. Fast forward a bit to roughly 12:50 p.m. She drops off a sandwich for her daughter at a local plaza. Witnesses say she was a little quiet, but otherwise, everything seemed totally fine. Then, at 2:18 p.m., a surveillance camera captures the absolute final image of Melissa Casias alive. She's walking eastbound on New Mexico State Road 518 near Talpa. And after that, nothing. She never returns to pick up her husband. She never returns for her daughter. The active search begins. But right here is where a stark discrepancy emerges. Remember how Melissa explicitly told her daughter she had to come home because she forgot her security badge? Well, the hard forensic evidence tells a completely different story. Security logs at the Los Alamos perimeter record a successful physical badge swipe from Melissa that very same morning. So you have to ask yourself, why would a highly cleared lab employee lie to her own family about something that is so easily verifiable? This is exactly where that mundane morning completely spirals out of control. 2. That is the number of mobile phones that investigators found abandoned inside the Casias home. Now think about your own habits for a second. Leaving one phone behind by mistake? Sure, it happens, it's plausible. But leaving both your older phone and your newer, active device behind, right next to your car, while you go walking for miles along a dusty highway, that is highly, highly unusual behavior. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the precision of the digital breadcrumbs left on those two phones. Forensic analysis showed that both devices weren't just tossed on a table, they were intentionally, manually, factory reset. The older phone was wiped at exactly 8:02 a.m., the newer phone wiped at exactly 1:38 p.m. That second wipe happened just 40 minutes before she was captured on that final CCTV camera. This completely shatters any kind of simple, lost in the woods narrative. Someone meticulously erased their entire digital footprint right before vanishing. For nearly an entire year, despite massive, sweeping search efforts, the trail was completely cold. But then, we hit May 28, 2026. A hiker walking through the rugged Carson National Forest, specifically up in the McGaffey Ridge area, makes a grim discovery. The New Mexico State Police and the Office of the Medical Investigator are immediately called in, and they positively identify the skeletal remains as Melissa Casias. But finding her actually brought more questions than answers. Let's break down these crime scene anomalies, because they are strange. First, the remains were found about 6 miles from her home in a really rugged wilderness zone. Second, and definitely highly alarming, a handgun was found lying right beside her remains. Third, despite having a body, authorities have not yet determined the cause and manner of death. Actually, scratch that. It's more like they can't determine it yet. They're currently doing specialized anthropological exams to figure out if that firearm was even the mechanism of death. And finally, maybe the most unsettling point, Melissa's family states that this exact area was already cleared by search and rescue teams way back in 2025. Okay, we need to step back for a moment and look at the macro context here. Los Alamos National Laboratory is responsible for the design and maintenance of the United States nuclear weapons stockpile. Both Melissa and her husband held security clearances, and they commuted to this facility together every single day. Look, when you have access to the nation's most sensitive, heavily guarded secrets, a disappearance featuring wiped electronics and mysterious firearms is a massive red flag. Let's move to the next slide and see how this builds, because this is where it gets genuinely staggering. 10. According to our sources, Melissa Casias was not the only one. Since 2022, at least 10 scientists and military personnel tied to U.S. nuclear and aerospace programs have either died under bizarre circumstances or just completely vanished. Consider the facts on these other cases. Anthony Chavez, a colleague of Melissa's over at Los Alamos, vanished from his home just 1 month prior to her, also leaving his wallet and keys behind. Then, in August 2025, Stephen Garcia, a nuclear contractor with high-level clearance at the Kansas City National Security Campus, disappeared on foot carrying only a handgun. And then we have Matthew Sullivan, a U.S. Air Force member and pending UFO whistleblower, who died in May 2024 from a lethal mix of alcohol and drugs. And the list of brilliant minds meeting baffling or violent ends only grows. In December 2025, Nuno Loureiro, the director of MIT's Plasma Science and Fusion Center, was literally gunned down right inside his own home. Just a few months later, in February 2026, Carl Grillmeyer, an acclaimed Caltech astrophysicist known for discovering water on distant planets, was shot and killed on his front porch. This shows a much broader scope of world-renowned scientific experts meeting incredibly violent, completely unsolved ends. Naturally, a pattern this loud cannot be ignored by the highest levels of government. President Trump recently addressed these occurrences, calling the situation a very serious thing and pretty serious stuff, pointing out that the individuals involved were very important people. Regardless of your political leanings, this really highlights that the concern over these missing and deceased scientists has reached the absolute peak of federal awareness. So this isn't just internet speculation, guys. It's an active, official federal probe. The White House and the FBI have officially launched a holistic review to try and identify any potential commonalities across all these cases. You've got the House Oversight Committee demanding immediate briefings from the FBI, NASA, and the Department of Energy to secure American scientific assets. Meanwhile, on a granular level, the FBI and the ATF are actively working right now to trace the origin of the exact handgun found next to Melissa Casias. We are reporting on an official response to a very real, very complex national security puzzle. Yet, amidst all these high-level federal investigations and massive national security implications, we really must ground ourselves back in the deeply human tragedy at the center of today's explainer. The family of Melissa Casias is still out there grieving a mother and a wife whose cause of death remains entirely unknown to this day. In a recent statement, they vowed to continue to pursue answers for justice. They are fighting for the truth of what happened that morning in June. Which really leaves us with a final, stark question to chew on. Was the death of Melissa Casias an isolated tragedy, or is it part of something much, much bigger? You have the wiping of the phones, the top-secret lab clearance, and the staggering pattern of 10 missing or deceased scientists. The FBI is still actively investigating this case right now. Make sure you hit subscribe for updates to this explainer as we continue to follow the dark dossier findings. Thank you so much for learning with me today. Keep questioning everything, and I'll see you in the next one.